Everyone is fighting with each other for local power, and it's anybody's game. Knock knock, it's Europe. No, they're not here to take over. They just want to sell some shit, like clocks, and guns, and Jesus. So that's cool, but everyone's still fighting each other for control, now with guns. And wouldn't it be nice to control the capital, which right now is puppets, with no one controlling them? This clan is ready to make a run for it, but first they have to trample this smaller clan, which is in the way. Surprise, the smaller clan wins, and the leader of that clan steals the idea of invading the capital and invades the capital. And it goes very well. He's about halfway through conquering Japan when someone who works for him kills him, and then someone else who works for him kills them, and that guy finishes conquering Japan. And then he confiscated everybody's swords, and made some rules. And now I'm going to invade Korea, and then hopefully China, he said, and failed, and also died. But before he died, he told these 5 guys to take care of his 5-year-old son until he's old enough to be the next ruler of Japan. And the 5 guys said, yeah, right, it's not going to be this kid, it's going to be one of us, because we're grown-ups. And it's probably going to be this guy, who happens to be way more rich and powerful than the others. A lot of people support him, but a lot of people support not supporting him. They have a fight, and he wins, and starts a new government, right here.
Out of this turmoil, in 1568, a samurai chieftain of modest beginnings emerged. His name was Oda Nobunaga, and he would attempt to turn the country around. Nobunaga hailed from a small rural fiefdom, but his outstanding military skills soon gained him many allies and brought him to prominence. He was an ambitious man, so much so that he dreamed of ruling the entire country. Indeed, the motto on his seal was to bring the whole country under one sword, and he didn't plan to do it by relying solely on military might. He started with a more subtle means, arranged marriages. Nobunaga married himself and 2 of his immediate family to members of other powerful clans. These unions established a formidable power base. He then began the process of intimidating other warlords to join with him. Those who refused his overtures, he fought, using every means at his disposal, including the latest tools of destruction, firearms. The first firearms were introduced to Japan in 1543, when a Chinese junk was blown off course and landed on a Japanese island. On board were 3 Portuguese travelers. Each of these Westerners carried a gun, a matchlock musket. When one of the Portuguese shot a duck, the daimyo in the region became fascinated with the weapons and purchased all 3 of them. He then ordered his chief metalworker to copy them. Guns soon spread throughout the land. Many samurai resisted their use, a decision they would later regret.
The introduction of the matchlock musket transforms warfare in Japan. And the warriors who adopt it quickly decimate the warlords who don't adopt it, or don't adopt it as well.
Oda Nobunaga welcomed the new weapons with open arms and mastered their use in battle. At the height of his power, he incorporated a force of at least 3,000 gunners into his vast armies. In a famous battle near Nagashino Castle in 1575, he formed at least 1,500 gunners into 3 ranks behind pickets. He ordered them to fire in volleys, one rank moving up to fire, while another rank reloaded. With this tactic, the gunners held off a force many times their size.
If you use them correctly, you can destroy mounted cavalry. Mounted cavalry at this point being mostly archers. These are the battles that decide the balance of power in the late 1500s in Japan.
But despite Oda Nobunaga's formidable political and military prowess, he would never live to see a united Japan. Like so many of history's most ambitious men, Nobunaga was assassinated before he had fully achieved his dream. Cut down in 1582 by one of his own disgruntled generals. The exact motive behind the killing is unclear, but it is thought the angry general felt he had not been properly rewarded for his services.
The Jesuits spread all over Asia, especially into Japan, where they infiltrated themselves into the samurai culture and formed an alliance with one of Japan's dictators, the shogun Oda Nobunaga. Many of these Jesuits were welcomed into the courts, for they were gifted and skilled at the sciences, but that was a wedge to control the culture in Asia. But many Japanese leaders caught wind of the Jesuit agenda, and they knew it was not to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it was an agenda of papal-led Western imperialism, and many of the Jesuits were massacred in record numbers by the samurai culture of Japan. Today the Jesuits call these men martyrs, but secular writer Avram Manhattan, unlike most secular sympathetic papal apologists, knew exactly why the Japanese beheaded and expelled the Jesuits from their islands, and he gave the true historical account of what really took place. Manhattan said the Jesuits were determined to plant the spiritual and cultural power of the church in Southeast Asia. They attempted with varied success to influence the cultural and political top echelons of society. These missionaries found a powerful protector in Nobunga, the military dictator of Japan. Japanese civil rulers began to realize that the Catholic Church was not only a religion, but a political power intimately connected with the imperialist expansion of Catholic countries like Portugal, Spain, and other Western nations. Whenever Japanese Catholics formed a majority, the Buddhists and members of other local faiths suffered. Not only were they boycotted, but their temples were closed, and when not destroyed, were seized and converted into churches. In 1587, Hideyoshi visited Kyushu, and to his astonishment found that the Catholic community had carried out the most appalling religious persecution. Everywhere he saw the ruins of Buddhist temples and broken Buddhist idols. The Catholics, in fact, had forcibly attempted to make the whole island of Kyushu totally Catholic.
From the mid-15th century through to the late 16th century, Japan was in the midst of a turbulent and bloody age of civil wars. This time was known as the Sengoku Jidai, or Warring States period. The fragmented and sparring regions of Japan were quelled by three unique leaders, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, and they were all greatly influenced and strengthened by each other's achievements. It's impossible to say one was more important than the other, as they all built on the success of the predecessor, but you can't help but have a favourite. School children in Japan learn the personalities of Oda, Toyotomi, and Tokugawa through a famous haiku, which goes, "Little bird, if you do not sing, I will kill you. Little bird, if you do not sing, I will make you sing. Little bird, if you do not sing, I will wait for you." Now, what does this say about each one? Well, let's begin with Oda Nobunaga. Oda is said to have been a brash child and adolescent. He was disobedient, violent, and even known as the Fool of Owari, which was his province. This was exacerbated further when it is said that he acted bizarrely at his father's funeral. One account is that he threw the ashes of his father over the altar, while another account stated that he burst through on a horse and he terrified all those paying respect. Nevertheless, his father had carried his family into a respectable position in his province that served as a springboard for Nobunaga. Of the many adjectives to describe Oda, ambitious and arrogant were very appropriate. He gained more land and wealth through brute force and zero tolerance. He was ruthless and did not accept the surrender of his foes. The fear that he summoned in the minds of those who were not under his control yet bore whispers and rumours that only served to boost Oda's reputation and ego. It is said that he once coated the skulls of a few valiant enemies in gold and then placed them in the room while he toasted their victories over them. Now, despite the tales of violence and fear-mongering, Oda was extremely innovative and willing to hear of new ideas. Oda was one of the first leaders to effectively reproduce and implement the arquebus, which is a European rifle brought over by the Portuguese around 1543 and onwards. Now, the decisive Battle of Nagashino was a prime example of Oda blending European firepower effectively with the traditional samurai weaponry of katana, which is a sword, and the spear and the arrows. Oda was also allowed the European missionaries to peacefully spread Christianity throughout the southern and mid areas of Japan, which perhaps actually reflected more on his attitude towards the warrior Buddhist monks that were supposedly trying to bring him down. But Oda's life met an abrupt end in 1582 due to the betrayal by one of his top generals, Akechi Mitsuhide. Oda received many titles in his life, but he was never called shogun, and as he did not come from the direct lineage of the Genji or the Minamoto clan. When the news of the treachery reached Toyotomi Hideyoshi, one of Oda Nobunaga's most loyal generals, he quickly returned from his own battle and avenged the death in 13 days. Toyotomi's is a rags to riches tale that has earned him many admirers. Toyotomi, which is not his original family name, it was Hashiba, grew up in a poor farming family, then serendipitously became the sandal bearer for Oda Nobunaga. And it was during this time that he impressed Oda with his insightful battle strategies, which earned him a samurai title, and then a position on his council. Now, Toyotomi was nicknamed by Oda as the monkey, Saru, and this was said to be because of his facial similarities to a monkey. Anyway, he quickly earned a reputation as a cunning and effective strategist, winning many battles for the Oda army. With the death of Oda, Toyotomi quickly ascended to the most powerful position and expanded the lands under his control. He made a number of important changes during his rule, such as samurai having to always carry 2 swords, as it was not uncommon to carry 3 before that time, and ironically, forbidding peasants and merchants from actually buying samurai status or carrying weapons at all. He also constructed the impressive fortress and compound of Osaka Castle, and introduced a tax system to fund his expansion. However, he had his weaknesses. He was seriously intimidated by his ally, Tokugawa Ieyasu, so he had him sent far to the east of Osaka to a stinky little fishing village named Edo, or sometimes pronounced Yedo. We will come back to this story later. Now, Toyotomi also couldn't produce a natural heir, so he adopted one. He later did produce an heir, so he had the adopted son and his family executed due to a fear of the future rivalry. He also never became shogun due to the same reasons as Oda. However, Toyotomi knew all along that his farming lineage was obviously not going to allow it. It is said that he gradually lost his mind, creating unrealistic, grandiose plans, such as the failed attempt to conquer China, which never made it past Korea, and losing all his tolerance, for example, the execution of the Christians in Nagasaki. He quietly died, some say of the bubonic plague, but it was kept a secret from his troops due to keeping the morale high. Now, Toyotomi's 4-year-old son assumed the position, but indecisiveness and confusion muddied the transition. Far to the east in the now bustling town of Edo, Tokugawa Ieyasu now realized that his opportunity had come. After being sent to Edo by Toyotomi, Tokugawa slowly amassed wealth and supporters through the farmers around Edo. He built an impressive castle compound and gradually claimed more land from victorious battles. But in the year 1600, the decisive and bloody battle of Sekigahara was waged between the 2 greatest powers in Japan at that time. Some 140,000 samurai from the east under Tokugawa defeated 85,000 samurai from the west who were loyal to the Toyotomi clan in just 1 day of fighting. Due to his lineage to the Minamoto clan, the Emperor of Japan appointed Tokugawa Ieyasu shogun of Japan in 1603. After a tumultuous 30-year period of no shogun in place, the Tokugawa shogunate immediately took hold and imposed a set of laws to maintain control. The seat of power now moved from Osaka to the eastern capital of Edo, which was later known as Tokyo. and that era of the Tokugawa shogunate was known as the Edo period. However, the most remarkable achievement was that Ieyasu's patient, persevering, and effective management, or manipulation, enabled the Tokugawa family to retain complete lockdown control over Japan for the next 260 plus years. In that time, Edo rose to become one of the largest cities in the world. There is one more haiku that people learn from a young age as well, and it goes like this. Oda Nobunaga piles the rice, Toyotomi Hideyoshi kneads the dough, and Tokugawa Ieyasu eats the cake. During the 1850s through to the 1870s, confusion, fear, indecisiveness, and treachery led to the Tokugawa shogunate crumbling dishonorably, and the emperor, Meiji, being reinstated as the ruler of Japan. The year 1868 is sometimes known as the official end of the era of the shogun and samurai class system and the beginning of the rapid modernization of Japan. Of course, many important events occurred during the era of the three great unifiers of Japan, but here is a very, very brief overview of some important dates. In 1543, the Portuguese arrived in Japan, and they brought over with them the arquebus, the gun, and also Christianity and some interesting types of food. In 1582, Oda Nobunaga was assassinated by his once loyal general Akechi Mitsuhide in the Honnoji incident. In 1584, Toyotomi Hideyoshi assumed the role of the supreme leader of Japan and avenged the death of Oda. He saw Tokugawa as a threat, so moved him to the stinky fishing village of Edo, far to the east. However, in 1598, Toyotomi passed away secretly, and then Tokugawa seized the opportunity at the big decisive battle of Sekigahara. In 1603, the Emperor of Japan appointed Tokugawa Ieyasu as the shogun of Japan. His shogunate lasted for 260 plus years after that. However, he passed away in 1616. Of course, he relinquished control of the shogunate before then. And in 1868, Tokugawa's shogunate came to a dishonorable and very abrupt end, and that was the rapid modernization of Japan.